The email came in just as the wheels left the tarmac in Johannesburg. 2:47 a.m. local time. Subject line: termination notice, effective immediately. For a moment, I thought it was a system error. I had been in the air more than on the ground these last 10 days. Tokyo, Berlin, Sao Paulo. 3 countries, 3 time zones, 3 crucial clients. I had just closed a $1.5 billion integration contract that was supposed to redefine the next 5 years for our firm. I blinked.
Once. Twice.
No, the screen was not glitching. My name was spelled perfectly. My role was clear. And the last line hit like a quiet, clean bullet. Your employment has been terminated. Access revoked. Do not return to any company property. Before I continue my story, let me know where you are watching from the comments, and hit that like and subscribe button. My name is Leora. I am 36 years old, and I just got fired while flying between continents, finalizing the single largest deal in our company's history. No meeting, no phone call, no warning, just an email from the very executive I had protected, covered for, and nearly destroyed myself trying to support. I looked around the cabin. Business class was dark, silent. Everyone else asleep in their pods under thin blankets, the kind of quiet only altitude can offer. But I was wide awake, staring at a screen that just erased 9 years of my life. I closed the company laptop. Then, slowly, I reached under the seat and pulled out my own, the one they did not know about. Matte black. Encrypted. Offline. I opened it.
Logged in.
Watched the screen flicker to life. And smiled. Because while they were busy trying to delete me, I had already written a new beginning. 3 weeks earlier, I was standing in the hallway outside the Global Strategy Conference room in our New York office, waiting for my name to be called in. The Trident project was finally greenlit, and I was the only one in our department who had experience negotiating simultaneously across multiple legal jurisdictions. Everyone knew it. Even the CFO had quietly asked me to shadow her notes. And yet when I walked in, my pitch deck was already on the screen, with someone else's name on it. Her name. I wish I could say I was shocked, but I was not. Just tired. Mira Caldwell was 2 years into the company, with more connections than credibility. Her father had served on the advisory board a decade ago. She had never closed a full-scale international bid, never been stationed abroad, never even led a compliance audit without legal holding her hand. And yet there she was, running through my slides with the calm of someone who had practiced what she did not write. The edits were subtle. She had changed phrasing, shuffled the headers, reworded the intro. But the framework, every flowchart, every predictive model, every client insight was mine. I had built it over 5 months, staying late while she left early, covering her tracks while she made public missteps. And now, she was presenting it like a personal innovation. I said nothing, because I already knew how this played out. I had raised concerns once, a year ago, when a mid-level director tried to overwrite my contribution in a partner handoff. The result? I was labeled difficult, not collaborative enough, and told to work on executive tone. The man in question got reassigned to a higher portfolio. I got a reminder about team cohesion. So no, I did not report Mira. I watched. I listened. I waited. Because the truth was, I had seen the cracks forming for over a year. When they passed me over for the Vice President of Strategic Expansion role, after I had outperformed every metric, secured 3 emerging market launches, and personally resolved a multi-million-dollar licensing dispute, I told myself maybe there was an internal shift. But that afternoon, while picking up materials in the print suite, I heard them. Through the barely cracked door of the boardroom. She is impressive, but too sharp, one of the partners said. She leads every conversation. Makes it hard for the others to keep up. She is field ops material, another added. We need someone more malleable for EVP. Then laughter. That laughter stayed with me longer than the missed title, because in it was the truth I had worked so hard to pretend did not exist. They did not want me to lead. They wanted to use me when deals broke down. But when it came time to reward, to elevate, to place someone at the table, I was too competent to manage, too direct to ignore, and too hard to claim credit from.
So I stayed quiet.
I booked my travel. I finalized every document and prepared every pitch. And I left for what would be the most important trip of my career. 10 days. 3 cities. 3 clients. Trident. They said it was impossible. That no one could secure full compliance from Telnova, Eurocom, and Orion Brazil within a single cycle. But I did. I sat in rooms with government liaisons, argued across translation wires, ran contingency forecasts until my eyes blurred, and landed every single contract clause with precision. $1.5 billion.
Signed.
Delivered. Uploaded to the drive just before my last flight home. And now, midair between Johannesburg and Dubai, I had been erased. But I was not done. Because what no one at the top of the company knew was that 3 months before this trip, I had started something of my own. It began as a whisper of an idea. A company that functioned the way I believed global partnerships should, with integrity, with clarity, with actual strategy, not internal politics and empty titles. 2 former colleagues from compliance and analytics had joined quietly, both burned by the same dismissiveness that now targeted me. We called it Nevera, after a mountain neither of us had climbed, but always intended to. And now, 37,000 feet in the air, that mountain did not feel distant anymore. It felt like the only solid ground left under me. Because this is the part they never calculate in those boardrooms. When you underestimate the woman you have relied on too many times, she might just walk away with everything. And, as they would soon find out, I did not leave empty-handed. By the time the wheels touched down in Dubai, my access to every system had already been revoked. No Slack, no corporate email, no internal portal, not even the travel expense dashboard I had submitted receipts to hours earlier. I sat motionless as the aircraft taxied toward the gate. Around me, people stretched, checked phones, prepared to disembark. But I stayed still, staring at the last message that had slipped through before the firewall closed. Wishing you the best in your future endeavors. No name. No call. Not even a signature. I stepped off the plane. My carry-on felt heavier, though it weighed the same. Maybe it was the silence that weighed on me, the kind that comes after something shatters but no one looks back. I headed to the airport lounge. Not to rest, but to act. There was one thing I needed to confirm. I opened my private laptop again, connected through a proxy, and accessed the backup I had created months ago. Every contract draft I had worked on. Every client insight, every compliance clause I had personally negotiated. And most importantly, my direct communication threads with each of the Trident deal clients. I had never used company servers to message them. That had been intentional. I found the thread with Rodrigo Vieira of Orion Brazil first. He was the most guarded of the 3. I typed. Something unexpected has happened. I'll reach out to you directly within 72 hours. Trust me, it matters. Then Eurocom. Then Telnova. Same tone, different phrasing. No panic. Just enough to let them know that I was still here and still in control of what came next. By the time my next flight lifted off for London, I had set 3 meetings. Private. Encrypted. Off the record. Because while they had fired me midair, they had forgotten what I built before they ever gave me a title. 2 years ago, during a Telnova Tech Summit in Madrid, I had stepped in last minute when our lead strategist fell sick. Rodrigo, the CEO of Orion Brazil, had sat in on that meeting unannounced. I recognized him immediately. Despite never meeting him in person, his reputation preceded him. Everyone knew he hated working with passive executives. When our legal team froze over a disputed clause in the localization section, I broke protocol and offered a hybrid solution based on EU and Brazilian compliance precedents. Risky? Yes. But it worked. Rodrigo had stared at me, dead silent, for a full 15 seconds. Then nodded. After the meeting, he pulled me aside and said, "You speak like someone who actually built this." That one moment laid the groundwork for everything that followed. And that is the part leadership never understood. Deals are not closed by presentations. They are closed in the quiet, in the credibility, in the moments no one is watching. Landing in London was surreal. I did not check into a hotel. I stayed with Neera, my former analytics director, now the silent co-founder of Nevera. She opened the door before I even knocked.
"You are early," she said.
"I got fired midair," I replied. She blinked. "Then we go live." We sat at her kitchen table with 2 laptops and 0 sleep. The skeleton of Nevera was already in place. Neera had spent the last 8 weeks quietly building the infrastructure, domain-registered, secure cloud servers, encrypted CRM, private client vaults. My job was to finalize the positioning. Nevera was not a copy of the company I left. It was the antidote to it. Client-first strategy. Zero dilution of accountability. No layers of hidden decision-making. And most importantly, every founder had lived through being erased. By morning, we had uploaded the pitch site. Simple. Black and white. No names, no logos. Just one statement on the homepage. We do not sell promises. We deliver what we built. Then we waited. 72 hours after the email that ended my career, I sat in a private office suite across from Rodrigo Vieira in São Paulo. He had flown back on short notice, curious,
Concerned.
and despite the $1 million boardroom we were sitting in, he looked at me like a person, not a proposal. "You built the structure," he said. "All of it. They told us you had resigned." I smiled. "Not exactly. They tried to erase me midair. But I was already building something that could not be deleted." He sat back. "And you want us to walk?" "No," I said. "I want you to choose integrity over access. What I am offering is not retaliation. It is redemption for both sides." Rodrigo paused, then reached into his briefcase. He placed a document on the table. Not a termination. Not a complaint. A letter of intent.
Orion Brazil was in.
Telnova confirmed next. Eurocom followed, albeit with more questions. They had all felt the instability under the surface of our former firm. They had just never had a reason or a safe alternative to leave. Until now. And so, without banners or press, without press releases or official statements, 3 major clients quietly walked away from a global tech conglomerate and into the hands of a startup that technically did not exist on paper 6 months ago. By the time the news hit the trade circles, it was already too late. My former company had lost $1.5 billion in projected revenue, and no one could explain how. Internal whispers turned into panic. Board members demanded clarity. And then came the fallout. The executive who had sent my termination email resigned to pursue other interests. Mira Caldwell put on administrative leave during the audit. And the CEO, the same one who told the board I was too intense to be client-facing, stripped of strategic privileges and forced to issue a public damage control memo. But I said nothing. No interviews. No exposés. No anonymous leaks. Just silence. Because true power does not announce itself. It arrives when the dust clears and only one name remains standing. And this time, that name was mine. The industry press called it the quiet collapse. But behind the headlines and analyst chatter, inside boardrooms and broker calls, people were not whispering about the company that lost the deal. They were talking about me. They did not say my name at first. Just fragments. Hints. The architect behind the Trident model. The negotiator who walked with 3 continents in her pocket. The woman who left without a trace until she reappeared with all the leverage. By the time I stepped into the Zurich summit 3 weeks later, I was no longer a footnote. I was a signal, a warning, and a proof of concept that no amount of hierarchy can hold back someone who knows her worth. But let me rewind. Because the most unexpected part came not from rivals or clients. It came from the company that fired me. They reached out. Not publicly. Not through PR. But through a discreet, high-clearance proxy. A private email routed through an encrypted service. Subject: reconciliation conversation. Strictly confidential. Sender: Chief Operations Officer, North American Division. I read it 3 times. Not because I was unsure, but because I knew exactly what it meant. They were spiraling. In the wake of my departure and the vanishing Trident clients, 3 more had paused upcoming negotiations. Investors were pressing for clarity, and the internal investigation had turned up something leadership had long tried to conceal. They were relying on the work of people they never credited. And those people were leaving. The message requested a private meeting. No contracts, just a conversation, at a location of my choice. Time flexible. Agenda open. I closed the email,
Paused.
then forwarded it to Nira and Malin, my two partners at Nevera. Malin replied first. Interesting. Then Nira. Your move. I chose Berlin. Not because of convenience, but because it was neutral ground. Cold. Focused. Sharp. We met in a small conference space overlooking a silent courtyard of concrete and winter leaves. The man who entered wore a $4,000 suit and carried the expression of someone who had been forced to admit they needed help. Leora, he nodded. Thank you for agreeing to this. I said nothing, just gestured to the seat across from me. He began with what they always begin with, positioning. This is not about blame. It is about restoring alignment. We recognized there were breakdowns, communication lapses, decisions made without full context. I let him speak for nearly 9 minutes, not because I was interested, but because silence makes people uncomfortable, and uncomfortable people reveal truths faster. Finally, he paused, looked at me directly, then said what he had flown across an ocean to say. We want to propose a return. Lead consultant. Global strategy. You would operate independently. Triple your last base salary. Full equity vesting. Public reinstatement. I waited, then asked quietly, do you know why the clients left? He hesitated. Trust. No, I replied. Clarity. They left because you never understood that execution without integrity is just performance. They trusted me, not because I smiled or followed orders, but because I never lied to them. He leaned forward. You could reshape everything here, Leora. Build the culture you wanted. Reclaim what was taken. And there it was. The word. Reclaim. I stood. Closed the laptop in front of me. I never lost anything worth reclaiming. You removed a title. I kept my voice. Then I walked out. In the weeks that followed, Nevera tripled its client list. Not because of aggressive outreach, but because of quiet referrals. Our site remained the same. No photos, no ego, no fluff. Just performance. We did not advertise. We delivered. And that delivery over and over made us impossible to ignore. But with growth came choices. Funding offers. Partnership requests. And yes, even acquisition proposals. Some offers were flattering. Others were manipulative, wrapped in flattery but steeped in control. One proposal came from a venture group with a thinly veiled connection to the same board that once refused to let me pitch directly. They dangled valuation,
Power.
global expansion. And this time, they did not ask me to adjust tone. This time, they called me essential. I listened. I nodded, then replied. Essential doesn't mean disposable. You had me once. You fired me midair. And now, you want to buy back what you never valued. They left without a handshake. And then came the Zurich Summit. Not just a corporate event. It was the summit, where companies fought for relevance and reputation, where optics mattered more than outcomes. Nevera was not officially invited, but Telnova was. So was Eurocom. And Orion Brazil. And all three brought me. Not as a guest. As a partner. I took the stage on day 2. Not with a slideshow or buzzwords, but with a single message. Efficiency without trust fails. Growth without clarity fails. Innovation without inclusion fails. The room went silent. Then erupted. And just like that, everything they had tried to silence became the future of the room. As I walked off stage, one of the executives from my former company stood near the side exit.
He looked at me.
Then looked down. And did not speak. Because he knew, just like I had known on that flight when I got the email, they fired the wrong person. And I never needed revenge. Because when your value is real, it will find its way back into every room they try to shut you out of. And when the dust finally settles, you do not have to scream. You just have to stand. After Zurich, everything changed. Not in a flash. Not with headlines or applause. But in the quiet, unmistakable ways the industry reveals it is paying attention. Our inbox doubled overnight.
Not spam.
Not press. But private inquiries, real companies, real budgets, real challenges, asking if we could meet. Asking if Nevera had capacity. Asking if I would personally lead negotiations. I never set out to be a symbol. But somewhere between being discarded midair and standing at the summit, that is exactly what I became. To some, I was proof that silence can be power. To others, I was dangerous because I had nothing left to fear. And to a select few still clinging to the old playbook, I was a problem they could not predict, measure, or control. Which made me exactly the kind of problem they could not ignore. But success has weight. And as Nevera expanded, so did the stakes. 12 clients, 17 countries, 2 continents. Each decision now carried echoes of everything I had once fought against. And one day, in the middle of a strategy session in our temporary Paris office, it hit me. We were becoming them. Not in values, not in structure, but in rhythm, in pace, in the blind rush to move faster, take more, optimize everything. Malin had started deferring too much. Nira was barely sleeping. Our junior analyst had broken down after missing a time zone update and nearly sending a draft too early. I called the meeting off, sent everyone home, then sat in the silence of that minimalist office and asked myself the question no one at the top ever asks until it is too late. What are we building, and what will it cost? 2 days later, I made a decision that startled our own team. I froze expansion. Temporarily. No new clients for 90 days. No team additions. No board seats. No external funding. Instead, I led a full internal audit, not of finances or operations, but of culture. We created a process called reverse trust mapping. Every employee, regardless of title, could anonymously rate how much they trusted their decisions would be respected and whether they felt seen in the outcomes. The results shocked me. While clients were thrilled and partners were stable, internally people were cracking. Not because of pressure, but because they felt they had to protect the mission from becoming just another success story. It reminded me of what I had once been, what I had once buried, and I swore I would not let history repeat itself, even if I was now the history. That same month, I received a message from someone I had not heard from in 2 years. Lena Voss, my former mentee. She had left the company 6 months before my firing. Quietly. No fanfare. No goodbye drinks. Just a resignation email and a disappearing act. Now she was requesting a meeting. We met at a rooftop cafe in Madrid. Her eyes were sharper. Her voice steadier. But what she said made my chest tighten. I was pushed out, Leora. Not officially. Not directly. But every time I disagreed, I was looped out. Every time I brought data that contradicted leadership's direction, I was given growth feedback. You know what that's code for? I nodded. She continued. They're still doing it. To others. Same patterns. New faces. They have not learned. They have only replaced. Then she leaned forward and said what I had not expected. I want in. Nevera. Whatever role, whatever city. I want to help you scale this without losing the soul. I did not respond immediately. Instead, I pulled out a slip of paper and wrote down a single sentence. She read it, then smiled.
It said,
if we are going to change the game, we do not just need players. We need architects. Bringing Lena into Nevera was like adding oxygen to a dimming fire. She did not just lead our expansion audit. She reshaped it. We built pods instead of teams. No hierarchy, just accountability circles. We tied compensation to impact, not presence. And every client was assigned a dual advocate. One for business, one for human sustainability. In short, we built the company I had always wanted to work for. And as we reopened expansion, this time we led with culture first, strategy second. But as Nevera surged, something else began to stir beneath the surface. A private equity firm, obscure, unnamed, began quietly acquiring vendors we relied on. Design agencies, translators, security contractors. One by one, we lost partnerships without warning. Emails went unanswered. Long-term contracts were bought out. Even our secondary compliance firm suddenly backed out of a multi-year agreement. When Malin investigated deeper, the truth surfaced. The shell firm was backed by a parent investment group, owned in part by two of the ousted board members from my former company. The message was clear. They could not beat us. So they would try to bleed us, slowly, surgically, from the edges. But what they did not realize is that I had anticipated this the day I chose silence over scandal. 2 months earlier, I had secured a back-channel alliance with a sovereign innovation fund in Southeast Asia. Quiet capital, no board seats, long-term strategy. They had watched the Trident shift carefully, seen our structure, read our terms, and they made me an offer with one condition: never become the thing you escaped. Now, I called them. Within 3 weeks, we had replaced every lost vendor with better ones. And when the shell firm tried to leverage pricing pressure, we responded by releasing an open-source operations template that undercut every proprietary trick they used to secure clients. They tried to lock doors. So we built new ones and gave others the key. But there was still one door I had yet to close. The original company. The one that fired me mid-flight, scrubbed my name, and gambled on silence. They were still standing. Weakened, yes. Hollowed out. But still pretending they had weathered the storm. Until one final domino fell. The Trident Consortium released a formal statement. They would be working exclusively with Nevera for the next 5 years, full strategic integration. Not just as consultants, but as co-creators. It was the final thread. 2 weeks later, the company issued a restructuring notice. Assets sold. Division spun off. CEO removed. Legacy dissolved. I never wrote a takedown piece. Never posted about what happened. Never gave interviews. But one day, a junior consultant I had never met sent me a message. It read, "I joined Nevera because I wanted to be part of something real. I stayed because I realized what integrity looks like when no one's watching. And that, more than the summit, the funding, the deals, is what mattered. Because in a world that rewards silence, performance, and pretense, we chose clarity. We chose alignment. We chose to remember that when you are fired midair, you do not fall. You fly on your own terms. You know what they never tell you? That the real ending is not the moment they erase your name from a server. It is not the email. It is not the silence on the other end of the call. It is not the heavy goodbye you whisper to yourself midair. The real ending comes much later, when you look around at everything you built after they tried to break you, and realize you do not want revenge anymore. You want peace. It had been 16 months since I was fired across 3 continents. Since they tried to reduce me to a subject line. Since I lost $1.5 billion on their behalf, and took it with me. Nevera had grown beyond anything I could have imagined. 32 active clients. Offices in 5 cities. A hybrid team that spoke 9 languages and worked across 14 time zones. But the most powerful room in our company was not the largest. It was the smallest. A glass-walled corner space we called the quiet room. No laptops. No phones. No noise. Just long tables, whiteboards, and stillness. Because clarity is louder than chaos. And that was the foundation we built on. I was standing at that whiteboard one evening when Malin walked in. He was holding a letter. No logo. No sender name. Just cream paper and a seal I recognized immediately. It was from the International Ethics Tribunal, an independent body I had submitted a sealed account to over a year ago. Not an accusation. Just a record. A timeline of my dismissal. Supporting evidence. Time-stamped communications. And names. Names I had never spoken aloud. Until now. The letter stated that following a full investigation, they had ruled to revoke the professional certifications of 2 senior executives. Both had played direct roles in my firing. Both had covered Myra's plagiarism. Both had authorized the deletion of deal credits with my name attached. It was not public. It would never make headlines, but it was enough. Not because I needed validation, but because I needed confirmation that what happened to me was real.
Documented.
And corrected, without me having to scream for it. That mattered. Because when a system fails you, healing is not always about making noise. Sometimes, it is about building something louder than the silence they left you in. Around the same time, I began receiving invitations, panels,
Books. Keynotes.
a documentary. They wanted the fired at 30,000 feet story. The fall, the flight, the finish. They wanted to make it cinematic, sensational.
Clean.
But I said no, because the truth is, it was not clean. It was not glamorous. And it was not revenge. It was painful, lonely, relentless, quiet. So instead of giving interviews, I gave opportunity. I created something called Second Flight. It was not a company, not a product. It was a bridge. A 3-month, fully funded program for women and underrepresented professionals who had been pushed out of companies quietly with no accountability. We helped them build again, sometimes from scratch, sometimes from inside, but always on their terms. No press, no press releases, just real names, real voices, and real futures. By the end of the first year, we had 40 alums. By the end of the second, 137. 3 startups launched. 9 re-entered executive roles. And not one ever asked permission again. One day, while reviewing a strategy case with a junior associate, she asked me, "Leora, how did you know you were done with them? Like, really done?" I paused, then said, "The moment I stopped wanting them to explain why, and started writing a future where their explanation no longer mattered." Because that is the part they do not tell you about healing. It is not linear. It does not come in applause or even success. It comes when you realize your worth was never in the role, the title, the chair. It was in how you carried yourself after they pulled it away. Eventually, the press did catch up. They ran a piece. Where did Nevera come from? They speculated.
Guessed.
Misquoted. I said nothing. But 2 days later, a handwritten letter arrived at our office. From Mira.
Yes.
Her. She was no longer in strategy. She had stepped back. Gone quiet. Her note was short. No excuses. No justifications. Only this. I thought it was easier to succeed if no one challenged me. Then I watched what happened when someone finally did. I was wrong. You built the future. And I built shadows. I hope you never stop choosing the light. I did not respond. I did not need to, because that was the final chapter. Not in our story, but in hers. Now, when people ask me how it ended, I tell them, it did not, because Nevera is not an ending. It is a beginning that keeps beginning. Every time someone speaks up, every time someone chooses dignity over desperation, every time someone builds instead of begging for space, the story continues. And my name? It is not the headline. It is not the brand. It is just the reminder that being fired mid-flight does not mean you were falling. It means you were finally free to take off. On your own wings. On your own terms. With nothing holding you down. And nothing left to prove.